So yesterday we worked on the M or the model in MVC, and today we're going to work on the C and the V, so controllers and views this afternoon. So we're going to add some routes and controller methods for our artists this morning. A lot of these conceptually should be very similar in nature to the meme stack. We're just going to be seeing the Ruby-esque way to do it, which too long didn't read is going to be much less code than is required with JavaScript. So if you want, I'm going to share my screen and let me show you kind of my setup. If you want to set up your screen similarly, go ahead and open up the app from yesterday. But this is kind of what I'm going to work with. I don't have a lot of real estate, but I have my Atom open. We're going to be using Postman here in a few minutes. I have my browser open. We're just going to use this for one quick example, and then we can get the browser out of here. And then I have my terminal open. I have the Rails server running in one window, and then I have another window open so I can do some Rails generate commands here shortly. So if you guys want to take a minute and go ahead and kind of get this set up. And once you start your Rails server, if you recall, we're not going to be using any Rails views. We're going to be using Angular for that. But when you start up your server, and Rails by default loads up on localhost 3000, you should see this little yay on Rails, yay, you're on Rails kind of welcome screen. So if you see that, you are good to go. So go ahead and if you want to get that set up.
So should we go into yesterday's folder and open what we had, open the thing from yesterday, or is?
You can. So what I did, the link that I just pushed or put into Slack, I just copied yesterday's, where I left off yesterday, and copied it to today's week 12, day 5. It's the same app, but I'm going to start working on today's version in the instructor examples folder for week 12, day 5 today. So that's the one that I have open. And
should we open
again,
instructor that? Should we open that same one? Should we open the same one in instructor examples then?
Yeah, the link that I pushed out. Again, this app is where we left off yesterday. So if your app that you built yesterday is working fine, I would just use that. But if you were having any errors or any big issues, I pushed up my finished version from yesterday. So if you want to work on that one, you're welcome to. But if your app is working from yesterday, just use that one. That'll be fine.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
Really quick.
Yep.
Won't they, if I just want to make sure just so we don't run into an issue. If they're working in the instructor folder, are you also working in that? Won't they get a conflict?
Yeah, I asked them to move do a git pull upstream master and move it locally. Yeah, and then plus, if we have today, we'll test out deploying this to Heroku. I don't think we'll have time. We'll probably have to touch on that next week. But remember that if you do want to push something to Heroku, it needs to be under a different version control. So you would definitely want to move this app out of the Medi repo. But if your app was working from yesterday, you should definitely use that one. Actually, let me stop my screen share real quick. Just let me get a show of hands. Give me a thumbs up if you were going to use your app from yesterday, if everything was working fine and you can just use that one. Okay, does anyone need to use my version from yesterday? Give me a thumbs up if you want to use that one. Okay, so maybe Audrey and Kieran. Okay, I just want to make sure because I think I renamed my database something slightly different because I have several versions of this app. So I just want to make sure. Yeah, so Audrey and Kieran, let's do this. So Audrey and Kieran, you guys want to use my example from yesterday. You don't. So Kieran, you're good with your.
I was just clarifying. I'll pull it up because it's in the DAV and already, and so I'll put up. As far as I know, it's working.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll do this right now. We'll take 5 minutes to make sure everyone's good, ready to go before we move forward, because we definitely want that app to build on top of. So for those of you that are able to use your app from yesterday and you're up and running, go ahead and take 5 minutes. Again, stretch the legs and such, and let's just do a quick timeout, and let me make sure that everyone is good to go before we move forward, because that is super important.
So I have post.
Okie dokie. So if you take a look at the screenshot I put in, I can repaste it. So we're going to work on routes and controller methods this morning. So the first thing we need to do is add some routes so that a front end, your Angular front end that you'll build this afternoon, can communicate with the Rails API backend. And here are the routes that we're going to need for an artist. So if you remember when we use this RESTful routing paradigm, there's generally 7 RESTful routes. But since this is a Rails API only application without any views, we're only going to need 5 routes. We're going to need an index route to show all of the artists, a show route to render one artist, a create, an update, and a destroy route. The 2 routes that we won't need are a new route and an edit route. And if you recall, those routes generally contain a form to create a new instance of something. We'll be creating those forms with Angular later. So as far as our Rails API is concerned, it's only dealing with JSON data, doesn't need any views. So these are the 5 routes and controller methods that we're going to create this morning. Now, Rails, again, it has a lot of cool magic, and we're going to take a look at one nice little bootstrappy Rails magicalicious feature that it has. So Rails has a way to magically build these RESTful routes for us. We don't have to do them by hand. Frequently, I like to do them by hand just so I can, get a better sense. But what we can do if we want to have Rails do this heavy lifting for us, we can use this resources helper method. And you can see it there in the screenshot. So we're going to have Rails build those 5 API routes for us underneath the hood. So to get started, I want you guys to go into Atom. And can you guys see my screen okay? Am I sharing it appropriately? Okay. So go into our routes.rb file. So if you remember from yesterday, our handy dandy Atom shortcut to quickly search for a given file, we can do Command P and start typing in the file name, and it will kind of get us there. I'm going to delete this little comment right here. So remember that Rails has some really helpful comments that it adds into the files that it generates. And this is just a link. You guys just read some of this information. It's just giving you a link to the routing guide in the Rails docs. But what we want to do, if you take a look at that screenshot, we're going to use a resources keyword here, kind of a helper method. And we want Rails to scaffold out RESTful API resource routes for an artist, for our artists table, essentially. So this command right here, this resource:artist, is going to instruct Rails to build those 5 basic CRUD routes for the artist's resource. Now, we're not going to be able to see them directly, but if you want to confirm the routes that you have available in your Rails API app, there's 2 ways that you can do this. So once you add that line of code, go ahead and if your server is running, do a Control-C and just restart the server just to be safe. And then in another tab, what we can do is a command called Rails routes. And what that command does is it prints out all of the routes that this app has available to it. Let me make this a little wider. So this application currently has, this is all of the routes that Rails built for us. So we have a get route, a post route, a patch and a put, and delete. So it's a really nice way to quickly scaffold up our application, our API. Another way that you can check this if you want is you can also go in the browser. Let me paste this link into Slack. If you want to check these routes in the browser, it's just a little bit of a different way to check it out. You can go to localhost 3000 rails/info/routes, And that'll also just give you a quick and dirty list of all the routes available to you. So it's pretty much the same information as we have here in the terminal. But since we can't visually see these because we're letting Rails build them under the hood, we can confirm what's available to us just by checking them this way. So you probably read this in the Rails guides. Just want to let you guys know kind of how these Rails routes are constructed. So generally these Rails routes consist of an HTTP verb. So those should be pretty familiar to us, right? Make this a little larger. An HTTP verb coupled with the path should be pretty similar to the main stack and Express. And then this other section, controller and action. So we're going to create an artist's controller that manages all of the requests and responses for our artist's data. And then there's a hashtag and then the specific method that it's looking for to manage each of these routes. So this goes back to that convention over configuration paradigm that Rails has that we talked about yesterday. So what we're going to do next, so we just banged out our 5 routes, so that was pretty easy. So now what we want to do is we're going to create the 5 methods that these routes are looking for. So we're going to create an index route, a create route, a show route, an update route, and a destroy route. But the way that Rails kind of gives you this information is it's the controller and the action or the method that it's looking for. So we're going to create an artist controller, and then we're going to create these 5 methods or actions inside it. And so that's how all of this information goes together. We'll talk about this helper path later. We don't really need, actually, we're not really going to use these. These paths are kind of like shortcuts to maneuver with, like for redirects, for example, which we did quite frequently in the mean stack. So once you save a new instance of an artist, redirect me to the index page or all the artist page and such. So Rails gives you some really succinct helper methods for redirects and for other purposes. But since we're not using views in Rails, we really don't need to worry about those helper methods. We're not really going to use them. The only thing we're worried about is all of this stuff over here. So step 1 is pretty much done, you guys. We bootstrapped our Rails routes. That was pretty easy peasy. So we're going to hop right into banging out these 5 artist controller methods. So the first thing we want to do is actually generate that artist controller file. So whenever you see that Rails G command, that's short for generate. Yesterday we did Rails G controller, Rails G model. What else did we do yesterday? We used Rails G migration to generate a migration file. So now we're going to let Rails generate a controller file for us. So if you want to go to the command line, let's do a Rails G controller this time. And we're going to name this artists. This will be an artist controller. Remember that, and this is the same as the mean stack and Angular. Models are singular and controllers are plural because they manage all instances of a given resource. So make sure that you're in the main app folder and go ahead and run that Rails G controller artists. And you'll see this only created 1 file. It's going to create a artists controller.rb file, which lives inside our app controllers directory. So let's go and see what that looks like. So again, it's over here in the app folder and then the controllers folder. And go ahead and open up that controllers file, artist controller file. It's pretty bare bones. Again, we totally could have just touched this file and created it manually, but I wanted to show you guys how Rails can generate this stuff. There's also some other arguments that we could add to that Rails G controller artist command that would generate a lot of scaffolding inside this controller file. But we're going to build those 5 methods by hand so we can talk about what we're actually doing. You'll notice that this artist controller, actually any controller that we build in our app is going to inherit from this larger controller called application controller. The same idea with our models. All of our models, for example, inherit from an application record model. So inheritance is super, super important in Ruby and particularly in Rails. And so the artist controller is actually inheriting from this application controller, this other file right here. And then application controller is actually inheriting from this larger thing called action controller API. We don't really need to worry about that right now. Just pointing out that, again, inheritance is super duper important. All right, so let's get to the good stuff. We're gonna start with our artist controller index method. So remember that an index, with RESTful routing, generally when we hear the word index, we're trying to get all instances of something. That's kind of the convention. So let's work on this first one, and then we'll test it out in Postman. So let's write some Ruby code, a Ruby method that will, using active record, will go into our database and return all of the artists as a JSON object that we'll receive in our Angular front end. So this is what we're going to build right here. And you guys, we can just code along, make a little bit of real estate here. So remember that all Ruby methods start with that def for define. And go ahead and build the shell of this. So we're going to create a def index method. And if you want to put it into Slack, if you guys recall from our coverage yesterday, and actually Audrey and I just walked through it as well, what was the code that we used, the active record method, if we wanted to grab all of our artists from our database? What is the code that we would use to do that? It's the code that we put into Rails console yesterday. Artist.all, yeah, perfect. So what we're gonna do inside here, inside our index, let's create a variable. We'll just call it, sorry, that should be artists. And then active record, when it hits this path, this route, this controller method, it's just gonna let active record go into our database, grab all of our artists, and then assign it to this artists variable. That's a lot less code than we needed when we were writing Mongoose queries and stuff. Cool, so once that's returned, the only other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna render this as JSON. And we're gonna send that artist variable back to Postman or to Angular or whatever service is trying to ask for this data. So that's pretty much it for our Rails index method for artists. We're grabbing those artists from the database, and then we're gonna send it back as JSON data. Again, Rails does a lot of plumbing, a lot of magic under the hood. There's a lot of configuration that we didn't have to do that makes this relatively simple. And we don't need to worry about all that plumbing right now. So go ahead and save that file, and then restart your server just to be safe. So I did a Control-C and then started up my Rails S again. And now let's go into Postman and let's confirm that that route is working. So if you want to go ahead and open up Postman, it's Friday. And if we're successful, we want to see something like this. So let's go into Postman, and I'll make this a little larger. And we want to do a GET request to localhost 3000/artists. And the way that I know that is the path I want to hit, I can go back to my browser and just confirm, okay, I'm going to send a GET request to the /artists path, and that's going to hit my artist controller, specifically my index action or method. So that's the process for how this thing works. So let's send this away. And there we go. So it is successfully returning. I deleted Rihanna yesterday into the day. I think you guys should have Rihanna perhaps. I know that Audrey and Kieran should have Rihanna. But yeah, so it looks like it is working correctly. It returned an array of our artists. So give me a thumbs up in Slack at that screenshot if you are able to return all of your artists from your database in Postman. And just for grins, you can also test this particular one in the browser, right? So we could do a basic GET request like that. So this one in the show, you know, we could also see in the browser if you want to test it out. And then later this afternoon, you guys are going to build an Angular front end that is going to do a $http.get to localhost 3000 artists, and then you can dump this stuff into your Angular app. So it'll be pretty sweet. There's our Tay-Tay picture. Little Drake. Cool. So I see 6 thumbs up. So let me know if anyone's having any errors or anything. All right, 7 thumbs up. Let's see. Marshawn, you doing okay?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, cool. Sweet. So 1 down, 4 to go. So let's take a look at a show method for our artist controller. So remember that the convention with the word show is that we're showing one instance of something. Rails is very big on convention, obviously. So this is what our show method is going to look like. Let's go back to our artist controller file. And just down here underneath, go ahead and build kind of the shell of your method. So these are referred to both as, they're Ruby methods, but in the context of Rails, they're also referred to as actions because they're actionable in the context of the Rails kind of request response cycle. So they're kind of both. They're both a method, and then in the context of Rails, they're referred to as an action as well. So if I use action and method, it's pretty much the same thing in this context. So artist controller, so if you guys remember from yesterday, the way that we would find a particular artist, actually, how would we find like one artist using the .find method? If somebody wants to put that into Slack. It's kind of the most general way to find a given instance of something, as long as you know the ID for it, which is what we're going to be using. Several peeps are typing. So given that we're going to be taking a request from a front end, we want to use this .find. Yeah, so Alan, so it's artist.find, and then in parentheses, that params, specifically the ID of the params hash or object that we're getting from the request. But essentially what that .find, the params.id is going to be a number. It's going to be, or an integer. It's going to be the ID of the specific artist that we're looking for. So in our show method or action, we're going to do a singular artist variable. You can name that variable whatever, but the convention would be, to call it a singular artist. And we'll do a find. And we're going to go into the request params hash and grab the ID that we're looking for, the specific ID for the artist. So it'll be localhost 3000 /artist /2 or 3 or whatever. And so that's what's going to get passed in here essentially. Underneath the hood, it's going to look something like that, for example. Cool. So once we find the specific artist that we're looking for, similar to our index, we just want to respond with a JSON data of that object of the artist. So that's what our show method or action is going to look like. So let's test this one out in Postman as well. I think we'll be okay if we don't restart our server, but if we have any issues, like Colin mentioned yesterday, generally anytime we're dealing with the model layer, it's a good idea to go ahead and refresh your Rails server because it doesn't always honor those changes. But sometimes for routing and controller or general types of changes, it'll be just fine. But you know what? We'll see what happens. So I'm going to try to get Taylor Swift, since I deleted Rihanna tragically yesterday. So I'm going to try to grab my second artist right here with the get. And if I send that away, and that's just taking its sweet time, huh? There we go. So I get Taylor Swift, the artist object with an ID of 2. So let me take a screenshot of that. And give me a thumbs up if you are able to return an instance of an artist successfully, something like that. And again, we tested out these active record, excuse me, these active record queries yesterday. So just like we did with Mongoose and with the mean stack, we're just wrapping them in a Ruby method. But we did most of this heavy lifting yesterday. So we're just adding some routes on top of them. So y'all did all the hard work yesterday. This stuff's easy today.
I'm sorry, can you tell me what's on your route? I can't see it from here.
Yeah.
Is
so
it artist with an S or with?
Yeah, all of our artist resources are going to be localhost /artists. Because if you go back to the Rails, I'll paste this into Slack as well. So remember, we put in that resources : artists.
Could I share screen?
Sure, go for it.
Okay.
Let me stop my screen share. Yeah, so just like the mean stack or whatever, anything having to do with an artist is going to be /artists. The same principle as the mean stack and stuff.
So I did localhost artist.
Okay, so yeah, so sorry, is this Audrey?
This is Alejandra.
Oh, Alejandra, sorry, I couldn't see you. So Alejandra, go into the browser. So you actually don't have an artist with an ID of 2, right? All of your artists are like 13, 14, yeah. Just something to keep in mind. And you don't need the colon, it's just the number. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
That
cool.
Makes sense. That's why I brought this in, because I don't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
All good.
How do I close? 1 second. There we go.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. We've got 4 thumbs ups. Is anyone else having any errors, anything like that?
I ended up having to restart my server. I don't know why.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes that happens. Like we talked about yesterday, a lot of times, just as a general rule, Rails is not quite as user-friendly as the mean stack and Nodemon. So usually, like, just to play it safe, it's a good idea to restart stuff. We got 6 thumbs ups. We are killing it today, you guys. All right, 8 thumbs ups. So let's move on, 2 down, 3 to go. Let's take a look at the create method. So this one's going to be a little more complexity here. So we're going to create a def create Ruby method or action. And for this one, we're going to create a little private area. And I'll explain why we're doing this in a minute. Well, actually, we'll explain it right now. So Rails, the good thing about Rails, it's very, very good at security. Like, security is first and foremost in the minds of the good people that maintain the Rails source code. So Rails takes security very seriously. So for the create method, we're going to create a private method called artist params. And essentially what this method is going to do is it's going to whitelist what we allow into our database. So when we're just doing like a get or a get for an index or a get for a show, that's not really that invasive. But as soon as we start trying to post or alter our database, we need to have a little bit more security around it. And so that's the idea with this artist params private method. This is a private method that only that will only whitelist a specific object. In this case, it's going to look for an artist object, and it's only going to allow the fields that we pass in. So if someone tries to pass in a, I don't know, man, not very creative today, tries to pass in a touring. So we, a what now?
Credit card number.
Credit card number. If somebody tries to pass in a credit card number field, which doesn't exist anyway, but if we don't put that into this permit method in our private method, Rails is going to reject it. So this is just a security concern. We need to whitelist the parameters that we want passed through. And keep in mind, you know, maybe we wanted to put like, maybe we don't want to pass in some sort of like password or something. You know, maybe there's some sensitive data that we do have fields for, but we still don't want like to rewrite the database or something. Anyway, the point of this method is that we want to add some security to what we allow into our database. It's kind of like a gatekeeper. So let me share my screen and we will walk through our create method. So if you guys want to make a little bit more real estate in Atom, make this larger. If you want to go ahead and create the shell for this. And this first line is we're going to create an empty artist object. So if you recall from yesterday's coverage, there's two ways to create something. We can use new plus save, or we could use the .create method. You'll see this set up in a couple of different ways. The way that I chose to do this, just to do some like error debugging. If there is an error, we'll get an error response. I'm just splitting this up into a new, and then I'm going to save the new artist. You could do a .create here if you wanted, but I just chose to break it out for this example. So we're going to create an empty artist object. And what we're going to pass into this empty artist object, if you remember from yesterday, we would do something like name Adele, hometown London. You know, we could do this manually. But what we're going to do is we're going to build that private artist params method here in a moment. And essentially that method is going to contain all of the pertinent data to create a new artist. So all we need to do here is we're going to pass in the result of that method. So that's what instantiating a new artist is going to look like. And while we're here, let's go ahead and add that private method down here. So if you want to type in a private, so this is, can't even spell today, ATE, my bad. So there's a couple of keywords that Rails provides to us for security. There's a private method, there's a protected method, there's some subtle differences, but private is a Rails keyword, and Rails knows to protect whatever is below this keyword. So remember that Rails is the order of your code matters. So whatever we put below this private method is going to be, it's going to have limited access. There's going to be more security around it. And the convention also is once we type in that private keyword, the convention is to indent any methods below, just visually, so you can kind of follow the code a little bit better. So we'll do that private keyword, and then let's create an artist params method. And all this method is going to do, it's going to take whatever form data, whatever data for an artist that comes in from our request, which is going to be a form essentially this afternoon. This method is going to handle that data and parse it and pass it into our create method up here. So inside of the artist params, we're going to go into the params hash or the params object. We should be familiar with that from our meme stack, right? That's just the request params property from our request, or object that's from our request object. Objects within objects, guys. It's very incestual. So we're going to use a require keyword. So in order for this to even, pass mustard initially, inside of this params object, we need to have an artist object. And we're going to build one of these in Postman to test it out. But before this thing moves moves forward at all, it needs to make sure that it has this artist object. So if we try to pass in like, an author object or something to this path and this controller, it's going to fail. It's not going to let it through. So the first thing it's going to look for is an artist. So it's going to require an artist object, and then it's going to permit only the properties or fields that we allow it to accept. And so inside this permit, let's pass in, we'll do name, hometown, IMG, and then albums. So whatever, generally whatever fields you're going to put inside of your form to create a new artist, generally those are the fields that you'd want to put here. And you don't have to, even though we have these 4 fields on our artist, maybe you don't want someone to change the number of albums. Maybe you want to keep the albums, maybe you don't want that to be altered or created for whatever reason. So just because you have these fields available for a new artist, you don't necessarily have to pass them through the database, just for what it's worth. Cool. So when we get a request from whatever front end we're using, from Angular, from a form, we'll get that request, and it's going to hit this artist params method. It's going to check to make sure there's an artist object. It's only going to allow the data for these fields to whitelist through. And it's going to instantiate a new empty artist object. It's going to fill that object up with these artist params. And then, if you remember from yesterday, we essentially just want to do like an artist.save, and we'll be good to go. So this would be fine. We could just do artist.save and call it a day. But it's a good practice to put kind of an if-else. If this artist fails for some reason, we'd want to send back a helpful message or something like that. Kind of like the try and the catch that we used in the JavaScript world. So I'm just going to put kind of a basic if-else pattern here. So if artist.save, and remember in Ruby that there's only, actually, quick pop quiz. What are the only 2 falsy values in the Ruby language? So remember there's like 7 in JavaScript, but Ruby's a little simpler.
Nil is probably 1.
Yeah, nil and false. Everything else is truthy. So remember, even like an empty string is truthy. So this is essentially saying if this is true, so if the artist is saved successfully, let's just render, and this is directly from the screenshot here. Let's just render the artist. So we'll just return that. That's pretty much what we did with Mongoose as well. Just return that saved artist. And then here's some response header information. You don't have to do this, but this is kind of a good boilerplate pattern to use. So we're going to send a status code of created. Now I don't remember the status code for created. I think I don't know if it's 200. But you know what? I'm going to check it out. I'm going to go to my status cats, and we'll see what that code is. You guys, I highly suggest that you bookmark status cats. I use this documentation all the time. What is the stat? Is it 204? I'm totally forgetting. If you guys know, just shout it out. I forget what this response header for a successful state is. I'm totally brain farting. It's 200. Okay, I thought 200 was a successful. Okay, I thought that was just for a successful GET request. I thought maybe when you actually save something, it's different. But essentially, if you can't remember those codes, like me, Rails has some really helpful methods like : created. So Rails is just going to send the appropriate code in the response header once this is successfully saved. And then what else do we want to add here? Location, artist. So again, in the response header, it's just going to send back kind of the path that we initially hit for that. And then for this else block, I'll go ahead and put an end there. Yeah, kind of the same thing. We're just going to render an error message. So for this one, if there's any kind of error, we're going to render the error object. So that dot errors is an error object that Rails will create for us if there is any kind of error. And then we'll send back the status of unprocessable entity. And Cody, what is the code for unprocessable entity? I don't remember that. Processable entity. 422. Okay.
Yeah, Colin said created successful is 201 actually.
Yeah, I thought it was a 200, but I mean 200 and change. Yeah, that sounds right. 201. So unprocessable entity is going to be a 422. Sorry guys, I just got to check it out. And this is what Rails is going to return. Isn't that adorable? I don't even know what to make of that. Okay. Anywho, so that is the code for our create method and then that private artist params method. That's a lot of code. So let's check this out in Postman. Let's make sure that it's working appropriately. So we'll go to Postman and let's send, let me post this into Slack. So this is what we want our object to look like. So remember in Postman, you may have your own preference. You may want to put like the key values, like to imitate a form. I personally like doing the raw JSON. I like to build an actual kind of object, but it's totally up to you. So if we're going to do a post, we're going to do a post request and we're going to send it to artists. And let's build an artist to send back. So I'm going to go to raw here. And sorry, let me go to body, raw, and then make sure that this says JSON. Sometimes I like doing this better. And so I'm going to create an artist. I'm going to create a U2 artist like that screenshot. So I'll put in name U2. You guys can create whatever artists that you want. Hometown is Dublin. I'm going to put this image, which again, that's just a Google image. So let me Google an image real quick to pop in there. I don't want to retype that out. Let's see, let me pick one. And I'll paste this into Slack if anyone wants to grab this one for grins. So here's a random U2 image. So I'm going to paste that in here. And finally, let's put an albums field. And so remember, just because we're whitelisting all of these fields, you don't have to send them all through if you don't want to. But we're just giving Active Record and Rails permission to pass these through to our database. I don't want to save that. Cool. So here's my artist object. And I'm going to send it away. And let's make sure that we set that code up correctly. Cool. So when I hit send, it looks like the response. I know that it's persisted because I get a fresh ID. So now this artist has an ID of 6 and created at, updated at. And then to confirm that, I'm just going to do a get. And I could even just grab the ID of U2 there. and I get U2 back. And then if I want to grab all the artists just to confirm, and I scroll down, I have U2 down there at the bottom. So yeah, so it looks like our create method worked appropriately. So go ahead and give me a thumbs up in Slack if you are able to successfully create an artist. Alejandra asks how to edit in Postman. So Alejandra, do you mean create or edit? Like edit a current artist or create a new one?
Yeah, so I did, hold on.
Sure.
I
Do you want
did
to
a
share your
post.
screen?
Yeah.
Okay, let me stop my share.
I did
So,
this. Okay, so hold on, remove everything. I was here, like I did post, and I moved to body,
okay.
and I just finally.
Yeah. So make sure that that drop down is where it says text. Make sure that that says JSON.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now I do send.
And one more thing. So remember that if we're creating a new artist, we don't need to pass in an ID for it because Active Record and Postgres is going to do that. So I'd get rid of the ID field. You could pass it in, but we don't want to touch the IDs, right? Let our database manage that. And then you probably want to get rid of the created at and updated at fields because again, we want our database to manage all that garbage.
Do I need the comma right there? No.
No, it's unnecessary.
So now I can send. And I'm
Yeah,
doing
let's try it out.
Post to artist. Is the correct route?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
So anything that we're going to do with an artist resource is going to go to /artist.
Okay.
Cool. And then if you do a GET request to that /artist to return all the artists, you can just confirm that you get that artist that you just created. So if you, so that was the ID of 18, right?
Okay.
Okay. Maybe it was down at the bottom. We just didn't
I don't
see
know. I'm gonna try again.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you.
it. Yeah, no sweat. How's everyone else doing? Anyone else having anything blow up?
I apparently sent an empty one, and then when I try to send the actual one, it's still giving me response about the empty one.
Okay, cool. So let's do this. Let's take 5 minutes. My battery's about to die, so I'm going to grab my charger. If you did get that working correctly, take 5, and then I can get everyone else up and running with this method, and then we'll move forward. So Audrey, give me like 60 seconds. Let me go grab my charger. I'll be right back, and we'll get you running.
Audrey, what was your question?
When I was trying Postman, I'm not good at Postman, so I sent an empty one, and then I realized I sent an empty one and how to properly send it, and I did that. Except now it keeps giving me a response about the empty one. I'm not seeing the new one that I actually went ahead and made.
Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah. So I guess I can make Postman bigger, but yeah, see, it keeps giving me this response. And I tried, this is the first one that I made a mistake on. And then when I tried it correctly, it's like I was still getting the response.
Yeah,
So,
can I just see that for a second? Hold on. Can you go back to your Rails app and go to your artist controller? Cool. Artist equals new. Save.
What's the so it looks like albums is misspelled in your artist params, first of all.
So line 28. And yeah, that looks right. Save it. I would restart my server first. And it seems in Postman, we're posting as text. We want to change that to JSON.
What?
So like you see text in the orange.
Yeah.
We want to change that to JSON. Like it's a drop down and we can change that to JSON because we're posting a JSON object. Yep, and I also think the number next to album should be in a string. I can't really see it.
On the Chrome, it's not. No.
Yeah. So albums is an integer data type, so I think
All right.
that'll be fine.
Yeah. You want to try to post that one again? Oh yeah, comma right there too.
Yeah.
So let's try to post that if our server is up. Yeah. Cool, and we can check our response. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can also, yeah, it looks great. And then you can also check out the Rails server. You can see how it received that request. It built the query and stuff. So yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, if you want to double check, just do a GET request to the same URL, and we should be able to see Lady Gaga in our index now. Cool.
Thank you.
Very nice. So who else? Sorry, let me put one more prompt in Slack and make sure that we're all up to speed. So my create method is working. If you don't mind, just give me a thumbs up on that prompt, and we will move forward.
I've got it. Posted it successfully. I'm a little unclear about the get method to get
Sure.
it. I've got get localhost / artists, and it's just returning everything.
Yeah, that's right. If you want to return all the artists, that's what the index method does. Do you see the one that you saved? Were you able to save one?
Here, I'll show.
Okay.
So I did the U2 one and
Okay.
I switched it to get, and then I hit send, and I've got all of this.
Yeah, so you're getting an error there. Let's go to, actually, your Rails server is going to be really helpful. So let's go over to the Rails server in the terminal, and it's giving you an error. Yeah, so it says syntax error, artist controller 28, unexpected end of input. So it's pretty common, like sometimes, so it looks like on line 19, you need to put an extra in there to close out your if-else block. And I think that'll fix you. Yeah, so save that, restart the server just to be safe. And I think you'll be fine after that.
Okay.
Cool. So did it save? Well, you probably, if you had that error, it probably didn't let you post an artist, right?
All right. I'll run it again then.
Yeah, try one more time.
And
yeah, click on body. Yeah, don't worry about the authentication. Yeah, that looks good. Yeah, go ahead and send that again. Sure. Okay. Oh, so yeah, scroll down a little bit. Oh, that's cool. So your albums, so remember that the album data type is an integer, but Ruby and Rails is so like, whatever, bro. So even though you submitted it as a string, it did like, you know, a .2_i and converted that string to an integer. So if you look down below, it actually converted your string of 14 to an integer of 14 data type.
Okay.
Pretty cool. Ruby's so laid back, you guys. Yeah, it looks like that persisted. So then if you grab all your artists.
Yeah, that's all. Drake, Beyonce, U2. Okay, I'm good to go.
Cool. Very nice. All right, so I see 5 thumbs ups. So if you don't mind, just give me a thumbs up and we will move forward. Okay. All right, cool. Well, let's do this. So we have 2 more artist methods. We're going to do update and delete. And then I'll let you guys finish it up this afternoon, but we're going to work on one method that will allow you to create a song that belongs to an artist. So that's something that we played around with yesterday with the active record queries. So we are almost at the finish line here. So let's do an artist update method. And this is what it's going to look like. So for this method, since we're going to make a change to the database, to the data, you'll notice that we're also going to use that artist params private method. We're going to pass that into this method as well. So anytime that we're doing some sort of post, update, or delete, actually the delete, we won't need it because we're not updating the fields. We're just deleting the whole thing. But with update, we're going to take advantage of that private method that we created as well. So let me share my screen and we'll knock this one out. And pretty much the heart of this method, again, this is the same queries that we played around with yesterday directly in Rails console. We're just wrapping it up in a fancy pants method. So down here below the create, and I hear Kieran breathing, so I'm going to mute you, buddy. Pretty sure that's Kieran. There you go. Thank you. So let's go ahead and build the shell of this thing. So we'll create an update method. And pretty much what we did yesterday, the first thing that we need to do, you'll notice this line of code is the same as our show method. So before we can update the artist, we need to grab the specific artist from the database. So this code is going to be the same as our show. So this is going to be that params ID. And if we have time, if we were building a full Rails application with views and such, this is just kind of like for your own FYI. We would be using in a RESTful Rails controller, we would be using this specific line of code 4 times. We'd be using it for our update. We're already using it up here for our show, but we would also use it for our edit and our new. And so what we would probably want to do to dry that up is we'd create a separate method to just use that line of code. So it'd be a way, instead of like repeating this line 4 times, we would like dry that up. But for the Rails API, it's not that big a deal. I see that Alejandra raised her hand. Did you have a question, Alejandra? Okay, yeah, what's up?
Okay, I see that you're adding this inside of the create definition.
No, this is an update. So we created an update, kind of the shell, and we're just filling that out right now.
Because it looks like you're inside of create. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, so, oh, you're right. Thank you for that.
No problem.
Yeah, those ends and stuff are pretty, can be pretty crazy. So let me bump that down. There we go. Thank you for catching that. There we go. Cool. Okay, so that's going to grab the specific artist that we want to update. And then we're going to do another if else here just to be add some proper error handling. So if artist update, and we'll pass in the artist params that we'll receive from a form. So again, if this is truthy, let's send back the LOL status cats. The JSON data for artist. And actually, as kind of a bonus, if you guys want to pass the specific status for an updated resource, you guys can pass that in later if you want. And let's add the else block, and I'll go ahead and close that off. Sometimes it's easy to like forget to put those ends there. So if there's an error, this will be pretty much what we did with create. We're going to send back as JSON the artist errors object. And then we'll also send back that status unprocessable entity. Cool. Yeah, so we're going to take advantage of that private artist params method that we created earlier. So we don't need to, recreate that. And I'll select this out just to make sure we're all apples to apples here. And then let's go ahead and test it out in Postman. I'll put in a screenshot here. All right, so I'm going to restart my server. Again, just better safe than sorry. And we'll go back to Postman. And let me, I know that screenshot says U2. Yeah, I'll go ahead and edit U2. But just be aware that your database IDs are probably different. So that screenshot, for example, is /11. But right now my ID for U2 is 6. So just be aware of that. If you just want to grab one of your artist IDs, because we all have separate IDs in our individual databases. But let me grab the information for U2. So I'm going to do a GET request to grab U2's ID, U2's information. And so there it is right there. And kind of the quick and dirty thing I'm going to do, I'm going to copy that object. And let's send a patch. I'm just going to paste that in. Well, I already had it saved. So that's fine. Luckily, I already had most of that information saved, so no worries. What I'm going to do is I'm going to update the albums to like 20. And so I'm going to send this updated object information. And again, we're just kind of pretending that this is a form that we're altering the data on our front end. So I'm going to just update the albums. And I'm going to send it back, again, to /artists, and then the specific ID for that artist. And let's send that away. And we should see the albums updated to 20. So down here in the response, I can see that the albums are updated to 20. I also see that the updated at field has been updated. So that is changed. It's more recent. And then again, if I just want to grab all the artists to confirm that, I can do a GET request to /artists. And down here, the very bottom, if I can get down there, is U2 with an album count of 20 now. So give me a thumbs up in Slack when you're able to update an artist, and we will move forward. And let me know if you're having any issues or if you need to see any code. We have 2 more methods to go, and we'll break for lunch. And then we're gonna, again, this afternoon will pretty much be you guys creating an Angular app that's going to take advantage of this API that you built. Pretty cool stuff. I'll stop my screen share for the moment. Just let me know if you guys need anything. I need to see this show. I'm getting an error. Okay. Kieran, do you want to share your screen? We'll take a peek. You mean your show method? Yeah, go ahead and share your screen. We'll take a look at it. Okay. Are you getting an error? So let's go to the Rails. Oh, okay. So on line 10, so remember the show is one artist. It's one instance of something. So let's change that variable to artist, not artists. There you go.
I think there might be a error with the end. You might have been missing an end on line 21, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, good call.
And you forgot your if in between line 23 and 24? Or
yeah.
Is it line 23, 24?
Yeah. So Kieran, on line 21, we need to close off that create method. So put an end on line 21. Yeah. Okay, so that looks good. And then like Cody said, so your update method, I pasted my update method into Slack if you want to take a look, but you're missing the if. You're missing the beginning of your if else statement. So we just want to throw that in there. And then your two closing ends look good. So Kieran, if you take a look in Slack, we need to add a little bit more code to line 25. So it's if artist.update artist params. Oh man, you were so close. You didn't have to copy paste it. You had it. And actually, guys, if you get the update method working, go ahead and see if you can create a a destroy method. That's what we'll do next. Go ahead and see if you can bang one of those out. And then we'll walk through it. So yeah, Kieran, that looks good. Oh, you have delete though. So if you do a get, yeah. Yeah, and then the rest of you fine folks, if you don't mind, if you do get the update method working, go ahead and give me a thumbs up in Slack. I see a down thumb. Okay, so Audrey, we'll check out your stuff next. Kieran, are you good to go? I think your code looks tight. I think it's just the mechanics of Postman. But yeah, if you don't mind stopping your screen share, and then Audrey, if you want to pop on there, we'll take a look.
Wait, I got it.
Oh, cool. Okay. Okay, good. Is anyone else having any issues? I see 5 thumbs ups. 4 thumbs ups and 1 down thumbs ups. Matt, you doing okay? You having an issue?
Can you take a look real quick?
Yeah.
So I'm continuing to get an issue where it's saying record not found.
Okay.
Yeah.
Artists 11. Let's do a get request to artists. And let's check out your artists. Okay. So are you trying to update one of them?
Yeah, I'm trying to update this one down here.
Okay. So let's do a patch to artist/11. And then, yeah, then let's check out your JSON that you're trying to send. Okay, so this looks good. So let's delete the ID field. We don't need that because Rails is getting that information from the URL. And we also don't need the created at and updated at. So we'll let the database manage all that stuff. Yeah, and then delete the comma. And yeah, so send that away and let's see what's happening. Okay, so let's check out your code. Record not found. Couldn't find an artist with an ID. Is that an equal sign or a
I don't think he has
dash?
the ID of 11.
Oh, so on line 26, Matt, if you go to line 26, that should be on 26 artist.find params square bracket ID. So that particular argument is not artist params, it's just params. So restart your server, and I think that'll take care of you.
Awesome.
Cool. Nice work.
Thank you.
Yeah. How's everyone else doing? Anyone else need any assistance? Should we move forward? Going once. Okay, so let's move forward to the delete method. Was anyone able to create a successful delete method? So Alan, you were? Alejandra? Cool.
I mean, I followed your slide.
Oh, you did? Oh, man. Okay.
But,
no, that's cool.
But it's like straightforward.
Yeah, at this point, it should be a little easier. Alan, do you mind walking us through your destroy method?
I did pretty much the same thing she did. I went through the notes.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I can go through it if you want.
These lectures
Sure.
are student-led.
What?
They're student-led now. Alan, you're on the spot.
Student-led.
All right.
Yeah, why don't you walk us through that one, Alan? And then we'll have one more to go before lunch. We'll be in good shape. So let's take a look at Alan's destroy.
So here's my destroy method. And first you have to find the artist like we've been doing the whole time. And then it's just artist.destroy. And then this right here is just to make the output nicer, I guess. So you find all the artists and send back just all the artists. Yeah.
And that's kind of, you could do or not do that. So since we're going to let Angular handle our views, I just put that in there as kind of like, so we could see something in the Postman, some kind of response. But maybe you don't necessarily want to do that artist.all query. Maybe you just want to do a redirect on the Angular front end or something. It's totally up to you. But yeah, that looks great. So we'll destroy the artist, and then we're just going to return the JSON object of all the artists. We'll return that array.
I thought that the reason line 37 was because the first instance has that artist, then we deleted it, and then we upgraded it, and then we sent it.
Yeah, that's true. But remember, a lot of times with Angular, the way it's tomato. But what we were doing with our Angular code, since we don't have to refresh, because Angular, we don't have to refresh the page. What we were doing was just like splicing out essentially that deleted artist from the existing array. You could do it either way. But to your point, Alejandra, yeah. So once we destroy that artist, we need to grab all the artists without that artist that we deleted. So yeah, that's definitely the principle. Yeah, Alan, you want to blow something up, see it in action?
Sure. So the existing ones, it has kind of a weird thing, I think, held over from yesterday where it won't let me delete them. But let's see, I'm going to delete number 22. And when it responds, it's gone.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that looks good. So if you guys want to, yeah, thanks for sharing that. If you guys want to, I'll put the screenshot into Slack. If you guys want to add that delete method for artist and confirm it with, confirm it in Postman. And so that will complete our 5 RESTful API routes for an artist resource. And then the last method we'll create is how to, it'll kind of lead us into this afternoon's, when you guys start building Angular to consume this API, how do we create a new song for an artist? And so that's something that we played around with yesterday in Rails console. And so we'll build that method and then we'll break for lunch. But go ahead and give me a thumbs up in Slack if you get your delete working successfully. Excuse me, destroy. It's always so confusing because you use the delete verb, but Rails active record uses the .destroy. It's the name of the method. And I'm going to add it into my version as well. Yeah, so you guys have probably already noticed, I think Alan alluded to it, so that artist.find params ID. So just in this like more stripped down API version of Rails, we've already used that line 3 times. So there's definitely ways to kind of dry that up. If anyone's interested, we can talk about that later, but and then if you do get your destroy working, give me a thumbs up in Slack. And then if you guys are following along with the lesson, go ahead and check out how we can add a song directly to an artist. Create a new song and attach it to an artist. So that'll be the last method we create before lunch, if you want to check that out. Yeah, hopefully you guys can appreciate how much less code we're writing, at least compared to the mean stack. Again, since Ruby is blocking code, that's the nature of the language, we don't have to worry about callbacks or promises or anything like that. Again, if we want to shoehorn those features into Ruby, there's strategies to do so. But you know, Ruby by nature does not deal with callbacks and promises. It's kind of a different beast. And is anyone having any issues with their delete method? Just let me know. Yeah, the callbacks and promises, yeah, they are pretty nice. Yeah, particularly once you get like comfortable with them, for sure. So yeah, if you don't mind, give me a thumbs up when you get that working. Actually, I think let's just do this. We've got like 9 minutes to lunch. I don't want to like rush through this last creating a song method. We'll just knock that out right after lunch, and then we'll go into lab time with Angular. So why don't we do this? If you got the delete working, feel free to break for lunch. Enjoy your lunch. We're pretty much done with our Rails API, which is amazing. And then we'll create a front end this afternoon. But if you are done with the delete method, feel free to break. If you want to stick around and play with the next method, that's totally cool too. But we'll officially kind of walk through that after lunch, so we're not so rushed. So go ahead and break for lunch if you like. Otherwise, let's get everyone up and running with delete at least. And then we'll continue after lunch. And if anyone's having any issues with delete, just let me know. I
I'm
see
happy.
two thumbs ups. You are? Okay. Do you want to share your screen?
So I think there's another issue because
Yeah, so this is kind of tricky. It just takes a little bit of getting used to. I made the same mistake earlier for what it's worth, but it looks like you started creating your destroy method inside of your update method. So if you take a look at the ends on line 38 and 39, it looks like your destroy method is actually inside the update. So move lines 32 through 30. Oh yeah, that's fine. Just cut that and pop it up.
oops, that's not what I meant to do. Okay.
Yeah, that looks pretty good. So let's try to get in Postman. If you want to restart your server just to be safe.
Okay. And now, so now I'll do, if I wanted to destroy the YouTube one, I go to delete, artist 6, send.
Yep.
Looks like I've got another error.
Yeah, let's take a look at your destroy method. Artist equals artist prims.id. So on line 36, so since we're getting all of the artists on line 36, let's make that artists plural. Yeah.
Okay.
And save that and just restart your server really quick.
Okay.
Cool.
And now, again, hit send here.
Yeah, actually, do this first, Kieran, because I think you did delete U2 successfully. I think it broke after that, so U2 may already be deleted. So let's do a get, and let's see what artists you have available. So you need to do a get request to artists. Let's just grab all of them. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure you already deleted U2. So we'll pick another one.
Let's see.
Yeah, is
delete.
Yeah, so you did successfully delete U2. It just kind of blew up after that line of code. So just try to delete like ID 5 or something, Beyonce, just to make sure.
Go, Beyonce, I hate to do this to you. So that, and then delete.
Yep.
And then send.
Mm-hmm.
And
okay, couldn't find. Oh, make sure that it's ID of 5, not 6.
Oh yeah, that's why I couldn't find it. All right,
yeah.
Delete 5. Beyonce didn't want to go. All right, and
cool.
There, I think that's it.
Yeah, that's good.
If everybody else is out to lunch, can we go over the update real quick?
Yeah, did you get that working?
I don't think so. So
okay.
I would go to, so I want to go to, if I want to update, I'll go to patch, right?
Yeah.
Patch, and then artist 4,
yeah.
and then send.
Well, first of all, you need to put some data in there that you want to send via a patch.
Okay. So I go here, click on body. Oh, this is here.
Yeah, so that's U2's information. That's fine. Just put do this first. Do a get to artist /4. So let's just see Drake's stuff. Okay. Oh, why is that you too?
I don't know.
Do a get to all the artists. So just delete that. Maybe you had two. Did you have two U2s or something?
No idea. So
Okay,
let's.
that's all right. So, oh, I know what you did. You had U2's information saved in the JSON area. So it actually, because the ID of 4 is supposed to be Drake. So actually, yeah, you did.
I did successfully do a patch.
That's right. That's right.
Let's do it again, just
yeah.
some little.
But what I was going to say is, if you want to copy number 3, like Billy Joel stuff, copy all that entire object from the curly to the curly. Just copy that. Yeah.
See, and then do get.
And now
3.
No, go ahead and do a patch to artist 3. Don't hit send yet. Just do patch.
Patch.
Yeah.
Go to body.
Okay. You then go to body and then paste in. Yeah.
V.
And clean this up a little bit. You want to get rid of that comma.
Okay.
And then remember to get rid of the ID field, the created at and updated at fields, because that's all stuff that the database is going to take care of. So we don't need to resend that data.
So delete this?
Yeah. Because remember that Rails already knows you're trying to.
And then the ID field and what other field?
Sorry, my thing died. Can you hear me? You can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. My earphone died. Yeah, because if you look at the URL, you're sending this request to artist/3. So Rails already knows you're trying to update the artist with an ID of 3. You don't need to send that information again.
Okay.
And the created at and updated at, you don't want to send that either, because you want Postgres, an active record, to take care of that stuff for you. And actually, the created at shouldn't change. The created at should always be like one static, it's just, I created it on this date and time. That shouldn't change. The updated at, active record should update that each time. Yeah, so if you want to change some information. Wow, he's been a prolific
singer.
Yeah.
He's got hidden records you don't know about.
Well, a lot of people probably covered his stuff, so it's like there probably are 1,000 versions of like Piano Man out there. I don't know. All right, let's go ahead and send that.
And then get artists all.
Yeah, and if you look down at the bottom, that bottom window is what's returned. So it did work. But if you want to just confirm that with all the artists, yeah.
There we go. Okay, I'm good to go.
Sweet.
Hey, Mark. I think I broke something when I was trying to